Well, I'm so excited for this particular podcast because ever since I started teaching at this school, the one common thread with all of our students is how much they love animals. We taught a class last year called Animal Communication, and it was I I got looked down upon by a lot of like traditional educators. Like, you're teaching animal communication in your school? And I was like, well, yeah. And by the way, it was the most highly attended class we ever had, and it was so juicy. Like, people were so into it and loved it so much. And so I really think that we learn so much through our special relationship with animals. I know for me, growing up, I was so impacted by animals myself. I didn't have the most warm, loving household, and this golden retriever popped into my life when I was in seventh grade, and all of a sudden I had this place to channel physical affection and just this warm relationship. And so I understand firsthand how impactful animals can be on kids when they're growing up. So I just wanted to um, open this up a little bit and just a brief little introduction of both of you. So Kerri Lake recently taught a class with me called The Inner Game of You, has written a couple of books, one called Spiritually Gifted, about the fact that she grew up really aware of her spiritual connection to everything, in particular animals, and then also a book called Listen Like a Horse, which I think maybe that was the book you wrote before Spiritually Gifted. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah.
And just describing like the special relationship you have with animals and how much we can learn about ourselves and relationships in general. So I wanted to have Kerri on here, and Kerri is going to be our teacher for animal communication this September as well. So definitely wanted Kerri on there. And then as we were talking, I was like, we have this one student who has this very special relationship with horses and talks about going riding almost every day, and told us a little bit about relationship with horses. So I thought, how cool would it be to have the two of you on here talking about your lessons with animals and relationships and what we can learn, and so that I can learn and our audience can learn from you as well. So with that, I just wanted to first of all start off in Belle. I was just wondering if you could just give us a little bit of a briefing in terms of your relationship with horses. Like, when did horses come into your life, and describe a little bit about your history there.
So I've been around horses most of my life. I've been around horses since I was probably 6 months old. And I used to only be with horses during the summer, and I would ride and just spend time with them. But then, right around when the pandemic hit, I started riding here in the US, because before that was all in France. And yeah, I went and I really started to learn with horses, and especially in the last year or so, I've really been connecting with horses and enjoying their presence a lot. Yeah.
I have to say thank you for introducing your connection in that way. I absolutely love that. Yes, you're talking about riding, but you spoke about being in their presence. And that is what touches my heart. And I would love for our conversation to sort of talk about what that is, and why being in their presence matters. Because for me, my family was not horse oriented at all. In fact, I was told, Kerri, the dog is not talking to you. No, the horses are not telling you how to live your life. But I was always like, yes, they are. It's right here. Can you not hear this? And I I always just wanted to be on the ground in the middle of a herd of horses, munching grass and telling each other stories and just relaxing. But, parents don't pay for that. Parents pay for their children to ride horses. So how did you come to recognize this idea of just being in their presence? Can you talk about what that is to you, and why you were able to use those words. Like, where does that come from for you?
I feel like my horse has been out in pasture for about 8 months now, and being out in the herd with all of the other horses is such a magical experience because sometimes you really do feel like you're a part of the herd, and it's such a great feeling when you feel like they're there with you and they want you there and they don't mind you and they're not like, who is this stranger? And I think that even just an experience this morning that I had, I was just there were some sheep in the out in pasture and they're very scared of humans, which I can't blame them for. And I saw that they were getting pretty nervous around me because I was going to catch my horse, and I squatted down and I was like, "Look, I'm just gonna be here. I'm not gonna go and like get in your space. I'm just gonna be here." And then this one horse, who's like the friendliest horse ever, he comes up to me and he starts sniffing my head and just being super affectionate and sweet. And then my horse is like, "Hey, get out of my way. That's my person." So he comes over and he's giving me kisses and just being super sweet. And I think that's just a good example of how horses will just accept you into the herd and make you feel like you're one of them. Yeah.
What's the difference then? Like, what's the difference between when you might be standing there and there's a lot of horses, but but a, on a different day you feel like you're part of the herd? How do you tell the difference?
I think it depends on the herd in some ways. I think some herds that are less social with people will like move away from you or just not be interested in you in any way. But if you're in with all of the horses and they aren't paying special attention to you and they, it's just a feeling of you're not a threat and they're happy to have you there, I think.
I love that you said you went to that it's a feeling,
Yeah.
right? Because are you just watching their behavior and their body language, or is it something more than that?
I don't think you can tell really by their behavior and their body language. Somewhat, but it's really subtle, I feel like.
Yeah. And what I'm kind of pointing at is, in my experience, what you're talking about is something I feel in my body when the horses are totally accepting. They're like, "Oh yeah, you're one of us," and they just go and do what they're doing. I feel like this expansion, like there's space everywhere where I can feel them, they can feel me, but we all have a bunch of space. And like you said with the sheep, there's an absence of threat, right?
Yeah,
And that not everybody has words for all of that. I mean, that's kind of been my whole life, is how do I find words for these things that have no words? Because humans want words. Animals don't need words. How do we bridge the gap, right? And
totally.
that's why I love, yeah, why I love hearing you talk about this stuff, because you have a capacity to bring words to these feelings as well. That's something I really appreciate about you. Um, so what about your family? Does the rest of your family feel horses in this way? Or are they different? What's it like for you with your human family?
I think my mom, she is always with me when I'm with my horse, and or most of the time she's with me, and she's really come to appreciate what a magical thing it is to be with a horse. I feel like she doesn't go out in the pasture and hang out with the herd as much like I do, but she definitely loves the horses, and I think that's it. My dad and brother don't really have a connection with horses, but yeah.
I wonder if they saw, like, when you started spending more time with horses through the pandemic and over the last year especially, I wonder if they noticed any changes in you. Or do you notice any change in you when you started spending more daily time among the horses?
I'm definitely much more grounded. horses are like the thing that grounds me in my life, I think.
Mm, I love
Yeah.
that. You know, a lot of people talk about animal communication as getting messages from the animals, or seeing pictures, or receiving downloads. Do you have any experience with that? And if you do, will you tell us about it? And if you don't, does that make you curious at all?
I think for me, it's always been a struggle to think about the animal communication. It's only something that I discovered about a year ago with the course through coherence.
Mm,
Um, and I think it's difficult for me because when I'm with horses or animals in general, I'm just there and I don't really think about what's happening. And it's just an interaction, and it's amazing interactions. It's such a pleasure to be with them. But I don't think so much about whether it just feels like it's more on an energetic level. I feel like instead of like a pictures or images or words kind of thing. I feel like it's just an energetic connection in some ways.
mm-hmm. So that makes perfect sense to me. I mean, that energetic connection for me was the way, ever since being a super little kid. And I actually first met Penelope Smith when I was 16 years old, and she came to do a reading for the horses at the barn where I was at. And I got to be there and hold Blaze, one of the horses, while she was doing the reading with him. And my whole body lit up like, "Oh, I know what you're doing. I know exactly what you're doing and how to go there, but I never thought that I could take these feelings and put them into words." Like that opened my whole world. And so then I met her again like 15 years later and learned a whole lot more, learned more vocabulary, learned more ideas and concepts for how to do this. But the reason I'm saying all this is because where it all started for me was what in the place that you're talking about, where I'm just there and we understand each other and we feel each other, right? And so to me, I think it's super important to let people know that communication with animals doesn't necessarily have to be, packaged as messages and pictures and all of that, that I might relate to it just as it feels awesome to be around them, right? And
Yeah.
like, have you ever had an experience where like something else was happening on the other side of the pasture, and maybe you and your horse just kind of look at each other like, mm-hmm, and you just know that you're both like paying attention to the same thing? Have you ever felt something like that where you're
Yeah,
just like in cahoots? Yeah.
definitely. Yeah.
Can you describe a scenario that do you remember a certain time or something like that? Just any kind of story?
I feel like there, I don't know if this is quite what you're talking about, but this morning there's a trail that goes up in the pasture for people to ride on. And I was walking my horse back up to the pasture, and I felt him stop, and he was like, "What's going on?" And I looked up and I was like, "Oh, there's a horse." And he's just looking at it. And I could tell he was like, "Why is there a horse doing that with a person on its back?" And we've walked the trail before, so it was definitely a funny thing. But I was like, "It's okay. I mean, it's just a person and a horse." And he was like, "Okay." And we just kept walking. And it was like, I could feel him being like, "I don't like that, but I'm going to trust that it's okay."
Amazing.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that. What you described, I'll just sprinkle some words around that. That is absolutely communication happening energetically between us. That's me feeling him, feeling me, feeling him. And The thing I really love about horses, and I've heard you say this before, that horses don't lie. They're always just telling the truth. They're just going, well, this is what's real for me,
Yeah,
right? And we can feel that. And the more honest we are with ourselves, the more available we are to feel the animals, because no animals are lying, except maybe the cat saying my food bowl is empty and I haven't been fed for days, right? They're really just saying I love my food. Could you give me more, right?
yeah,
But that connection, when we just get curious about what they're curious about, that takes us right to that place where we can feel each other and communication is natural. You know what I'm talking about, right?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So just to sprinkle a couple of more words, what you just described about walking with my horse and my horse goes, whoa, what's that? And I go, oh, show me what you're looking at. And then we're both seeing the same things and we know it. And then we both relax. We can call that good horsemanship. We can call that good relationship. We can call that good listening. And developing that ability in ourselves, we can call that self-knowledge, right? So there's just so much of, like Andrew was saying in the introduction, there's just so much about being with animals and discovering who I am next to animals that it's complete life skills, right? It helps us learn about ourselves. And
Definitely.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's so fun that you get this.
yeah.
It's so fun for me. So, where do you want to go with horses? Like, do you have any sense of um, like how you'd like your life to expand, including horses, or do you have any vision in that way, or are you just hanging out in the pasture?
I don't know. I mean, I love riding too. It's something that I totally enjoy, and um, I feel like it's a nice way to connect with your horse in the same way, where it's like we're partners here. We're both working towards the same goal. But I love horses generally. I just want to be with horses and do what I can with horses. I'd love to work with um, babies, like a baby horse, if that would be possible, because that's been my dream for a long time, or a Mustang.
Mhm.
But for now, I have my horse Charlie, who's a handful, and he's lots of fun to work with. But yeah, I love him. He's great.
So great. I hope I get to meet Charlie one day. Uh,
Yeah.
I would love to ask you this one other question because I know it percolates on lots of people's minds. How do you know that Charlie enjoys riding or that you're on the same page when you're riding? What tells you that? How do you know? Just you.
I feel like there's definitely certain things that he prefers doing. It's At first he's like, do we really have to do this? Like, I don't know if this is what I want to be doing. But then I'm like, can we try and see how you feel about it? And it turns into, I think he enjoys feeling like he can do something well and like, oh, I get it. Um, I think horses enjoy feeling accomplished. And I think that's why liberty, a lot of people turn to liberty because they feel like in liberty, horses really understand, like, oh, yeah, that felt good. But I think you can get the same kind of connection with riding. Yeah. And I think, I don't really know how to put it. But yeah, I think he enjoys it. Yeah, I think he does.
Will you describe what liberty is for people who
Um,
don't know what that
yeah,
means?
liberty is a way to work your horse without any, or with very minimal um, ropes or halters around their head or things like that. And it's using your own body and sometimes other tools to communicate with your horse to do different fun things. I mean, there's so much you can do with Liberty. You can teach them to run away from you or run to you or rear or so many crazy things.
Or go over jumps or go
Yeah,
stand up on a pedestal. Yeah, there's so much fun. It's um, giving a horse as much freedom as possible so that you really can cultivate this. It's a two-way interaction, and the horse has the option to walk away if they're like, no, I'm just not about that, right? And so you get to feel really purely that he's actually responding to my body, my energy, my asking. It's, yeah, liberty work can be so empowering for both people and horses.
definitely. Yeah.
Yeah,
I have a
amazing.
question
So
for
what?
you, Belle. Yeah,
Yeah.
have a question for you, Belle. I am wondering, since you started spending more time with horses, it sounds like 3 or 4 years ago, do you find that it's changed the nature of your friendships? Like you're talking about the certain types of qualities of relationship that you have with horses, like honesty. Has it changed the types of things that you're looking for in friendships, kind of the standards or the criteria that really feel satisfying for you for a human friendship?
I'm not sure. I know that my feelings on friendships have changed a lot in the last maybe 6 months or so, but I'm not sure if it has anything to do with horses because I know I used to crave being with people all the time. And that could just be because I'm a pandemic kid. But now I feel like I'm more content to not see people and I'm like I don't need people so much. I'm fine on my own. And yeah, that's a good question though, Andrew. I'll have to think about that.
Great, great. Yeah, let me know. Kerri, did you find that was the case for you as well after you'd spent more time with horses and animals, like what you were looking for friendships with people?
Most definitely. I had sort of a bumpy relationship with humans my whole life. Just because I was so close to animals and animals were always honest. And humans have the capacity to create a story in their mind and live according to the story. Animals don't do that. And it feels very different to be, for me, to be around animals than around people. So, friendships and close relationships for me, it matters so much if the person is willing to be honest and kind with themselves and with others, because it just was no conflict. That I didn't feel any conflict. And so, yeah, I've had friendships with a whole range of people, but I find that the ones I want to spend the most time with and the ones I really want to reveal my heart to are people who are at least aware that being honest with ourselves makes everything a lot simpler in the world. That honesty of animals, there's less to think about, right? There's less to kind of position and balance and discover who am I next to you, because they're just saying, well, here I am. This is what it's like to be me. And I actually really love being that way as a human myself. How about you, Andrew? When you had a friendship with your golden retriever, what was special for you about that?
Yeah, the same thing. I didn't have to play any games. I was just accepted the way I was, really unconditionally loved. I got to see what that felt like. And then just that playful relationship too that you can have with a dog. I love to play as well, and it's just like anytime I wanted to play, like the dog's like, "Yeah, okay, let's go." So, or even if I didn't feel like playing, the dog's like, "Come on, let's play," and I'm like, "All right," and then I would feel better afterwards. So, yeah, and I too, I just feel like it really opened up my intuitive channels a lot as well, which it sounds like your relationship with horses did for you, and I've experienced that with a lot of other animals, including this really magical experience where I mentally called in a pod of dolphins when I was in Hawaii last time, to an extent where it was undeniable that my intention and my thought process for bringing them in brought them in immediately. I'm like, wow, this is amazing what we can, the type of connection that we can have that we've really forgotten. And you would look at native cultures, they were all about their connection with nature and with animals, and they just centered their life around that. So I love that we get to rediscover that, and I think it just adds so much to the richness of our lives and the beauty of our connection with something greater than just like whatever we're simmering in and whatever problems we're concerned with at the time. It helps like you said, Belle, we could just really ground ourselves through this relationship with animals.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, everybody is born with a capacity for intuition, and that's what is common between, it's what we have in common with all forms of life is our ability to connect intuitively. And whether or not people want to be an animal communicator or, be around animals at all, if you can recognize that connection within yourself, it's going to open you up to be more of who you genuinely are in any walk of life, because it's resident in our lives. And like you said, calling in a pod of dolphins, Andrew, a few years ago I was on Kauai as well on a 2-person kayak in the ocean, and I knew I wanted to connect with the dolphins while we were out there. And I heard, just telepathically, put your foot in the water and sing. So I hung my foot over the side of the kayak and started to sing a song that I love singing. And like you said, immediately I looked straight ahead and there's a pod of dolphins like coming directly at us. And it was about 9 of them. They circled our kayak and they're jumping and spinning. And I, of course, dumped myself over the side of the kayak and swam with them for a little while. And so it's, again, it's worth it, I think, no matter if you're a video game creator or an athlete or a business person, finding this part of ourselves can enrich absolutely every part of our lives just because it's so natural, whether or not you ever are going to, spend day-to-day time with animals. And even that, having cats and dogs in our life, they're serving in this way, whether or not we're recognizing it. But when we recognize their connection, everything in life, all of our relationships can be enhanced by that. That's been my experience anyway. I have one more question, Belle. If there was anything that you would want to ask of a particular animal or a particular species or a non-animal species, a forest or a tree or a mycelium, what kind of questions would you ask the non-human world?
I would just ask what's going on? Because sometimes I don't understand at all, Sometimes I'm like, what? Like, I just don't get it, Um, I would just want to understand what's going on in their brain.
Ah, amazing. What a beautiful question. Yeah, me too. What I love about that is because we're humans and we're the ones with the thinkiness and the ability to change perspective, that curiosity, it opens a way for us to be super flexible and consider worldviews that are very different than ours, right?
Yeah.
Like a banana slug is probably not going to have the same worldview as a human, right?
Yeah.
So what does
I
it
know
take,
some
you think, to
humans
have
that
that?
are very banana slug-like, actually.
Well, Well, maybe we should, we'll go and consult with them and go, what do you think is going on, right?
Yeah.
What does it take to develop that flexibility? To have a flexibility of perspective like that? What do you think it takes? Either of you.
I think just a general openness to whatever is going to happen is fine. Just a go with the flow kind of attitude to the extreme.
Totally. Yeah.
I find ever since I was a kid, I could tune into anything that I wanted to tune into, whether it was a tree or whether it was an animal or another person. I could just kind of extend myself out, and I could just feel what they were feeling. And and I think the more that we do that, especially with nature, we just get so much information from that. And I really believe it can be super simple, just as easy as asking that question that you were saying, Belle, like, what's going on? What's going on, tree? What's going on, fence post? And you'll get information.
It's so beautiful. A lot of people are learning about empathy, our empathic sense. And I think, Andrew, what you're pointing to is definitely an empathic sense, but I think there's just more to it. Who we are is so much more than our bodies. And I think more and more people are aware of it now, that we have an energetic presence. We have a limitless consciousness. And so when we can find a way to relate to that part of ourselves, then I think lets us tap into that ability to tune in to another being. And whether it's the story you shared with us, Belle, of, the horse, Charlie, going, what is that? And you can feel him asking. And then we meet him there, right? That's an absolute example of feeling somebody, feeling me, feeling them back. And it can absolutely happen with trees and even minerals and rocks, but it's a matter of us being willing and flexible to find the part of ourselves that can reach out. To me, that's the magic that we can do as humans and make ourselves available in that way.
Wow, how beautiful. Well, on that note, I would just love to thank both of you so much for coming on and talking about this really fundamental part of ourselves and this magical relationship that we have with certain animals and what we can learn from them. And I look forward to continuing this dialogue in the animal communication class, and anytime we get together, let's explore further. So, Belle, thank you so much for coming on with us. It's been such a pleasure and honor to have you here with all the wisdom that you've gained. And Kerri, same. Just so blessed to have you as part of Coherence Education. And with that,
Well, thank you.
be well.
Yeah, thank you, Andrew.